All right, everyone, welcome to Mentorship Live today. I am Jacqueline Widdis. I've loved to do this as just a side project to help people. And today I have Diana Volere with me. We're going to be talking about when everything falls apart. And that's something we have never really talked about, and we should, because job searching, being employed, and life often throws us these curveballs. I know I can speak for Diana that we've had a crazy month. And so this is a very timely topic. So welcome. Would you like to do a quick introduction, or would you like me to yammer about you? Because I could do that too. She's a valuable friend and someone who's walked through life with me for a really long time. And I thank you for being here.
Is quite a privilege. I'll take 2 seconds. Diana Valera, you've all been introduced now. I've been on this before once, so I may have heard some of you before, I hope. But I am a senior security partner at Netflix right now, and I've had kind of a crazy career path myself, where often it's the vicissitudes of life that's taken me to my next step, a little bit less than a careful strategy and well thought out plan. So I have both, not never, but not always. So I have both of those in my tool bag of experience to be able to discuss. And I'm very, very honored to be here. I spent a lot of time mentoring in another organization about Women's Security Alliance. And yeah, this is part of my passion, being able to help people who are in their own process on the journey. So please feel free, look me up on LinkedIn. I'm always a resource for everyone here.
Yes, and if anyone feels up to it, if you want to pop into chat, are you a job seeker? Are you employed? Is your life falling apart right now? I'd love to get to know you and where you are today, so we can speak to our audience truly. But all right, so when my daughter is in therapy, we often talk about things like negative surprises. So I'm going to assume that this topic is about when the negative surprises smack you in the face. And that may be someone who took a long time to overcome a career gap. There were so many negative surprises in the form of, sorry, we're going with another candidate. Crickets, I got a lot of silence. And then there was even the time I showed up for a job interview and like, oh, we posted the wrong job. This is what you're actually interviewing for. Nobody wants to show up to a job interview and find out what you thought you were preparing for is not what the role was. So like, how do you handle the immediate surprise of a negative surprise?
I'd love to say with calm, cool, collected poise, but I think there's a certain reality that all of us have that moment when we are shell-shocked by the immediate world is exploding. What the heck am I going to do? I have a very real story for this for everybody. I took my job at Netflix that I love, but I was brought in for a particular role, and a month after I started, literally 4 weeks in, my boss was fired. I was left in sort of a limbo where I could not achieve the mission, sort of reporting higher up to somebody who had no time really to focus. And it felt like everything was falling apart. Like my whole team was going to go nowhere. Like literally, what the heck do you do? And in those first moments, the main suggestion I would give is try not to react immediately. When things explode, it can be very easy to say something to your boss's boss about the disaster, try to take a step back, because the landscape around you is changing, and it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to end up bad in the end. In some cases it does. I mean, some surprises are that sort of surprise. There's nothing you can do. But most of the time, change feels horrible just because it's change. But it doesn't always have to be. So that mantra of pause and take a breath and try to look at things rather than saying, what am I going to do? My job is going away potentially. I have nowhere to park. It's a lot of, okay, let's reassess the environment, get a realistic perspective, not driven by my panic and emotion at the moment. And that's really what I would strongly say. How about you? Sudden surprise. What do you do?
Well, see, for me, like, I love you did one thing, which is the first thing that I did when you were relaying that story. You went, my number one thing is to take a really big, deep breath and try and get actual oxygen to my brain. into my body, and to kind of remind myself, you're still here, you're still breathing, and this is just a life circumstance. And I think one advantage to having been a military spouse is I had a lot of practice in deep breathing, because the military does not exactly prepare you for what they have in mind, even if you think you're being prepared for what they have in mind. And it could be oh, this is where this is going to go today. Never mind, we're going to actually send you here. And everything that you thought was one thing turns out to be another. But then I also do mantra a lot. I have a lot of things. I have a whiteboard where I just put stickers on, and one of them says I can do hard things. And I've used that for years and years and years, and I'll tell myself, you can do hard things because you've already done hard things. And I will reflect often on what have I already been through, and remind myself how it felt in that moment, and then how it kind of turned out in the end. And I'm not saying everything turned out golden. There are still questions that I'm like, I still don't see a purpose on why that might have happened in life. But I know I grew through it. So I kind of try to acknowledge those past experiences and where I ended up, and appreciate my own growth through that. And remind myself I wouldn't be the person who I am today if I hadn't gone through that piece then. And it is a lot of self-reflection in those moments. But that's my step one.
Sure. I see Danielle was just commenting about how the mindset, everything's going to work out. It's just a blip. It's just a blip in the grand scheme. I like that. Even if the blip may feel like the mountain as opposed to the molehill, it's still going to pass. It comes to pass. So that's a good way to approach it. Okay. It's a blip, which kind of means that you can reboot. Every time your computer glitches or there's a blip, it's a good time to reboot and take that minute and, effectively in life, the simile of it. Rebooting.
And Mohammed, you have your hand up. I'd love to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah, thank you guys. I completely agree with what you guys mentioned. Like, just take a deep breath and understand that, it's just a phase in life, and everything kind of comes full circle. But any advice? I guess I'm speaking from my perspective. I'm only 24 years old, and I most recently left a pretty good job. Financially very well, reputable company. But anything that you guys can give advice in regards to getting back on your feet after taking some time off for work, just to work on mental health and stuff like that.
Was that?
Is that
all right? Taking that or to me?
Yeah, probably.
I have actually taken I had a boss say, hey, you need some time before in my life. And that was lovely. But I did not leave the job. It was time within a job. I think getting back on your feet, and this is just giving I'm not a professional of no therapist or anything like that. I'm just talking from my own experience here, that getting back on your feet and into the job queue after you've had a break for whatever reason, a lot of that is being able to own the story of it and go to somebody and be like, hey, I had a point in my life where I had to take some time off and focus on what I was doing for myself to be able to show up as a better person in the job. And if you can articulate something that, you may not want to get into the personal stuff of why you had a problem, but if you're speaking to a recruiter, you can be authentic about, I hit a wall, I had a problem like this, and here's some things that I learned when I took some time off to work on myself so I could show up better. Getting back into the job hunt itself, I think that you're here doing the right things. It's that networking, showing up to people who may have similar roles to what you're interested in, and just building those relationships to be able to. I'm speaking Jacqueline's text here, but it's true. The easing back into it is finding people who are doing what you want to do and following them and becoming in relationship with them, because those are the people who will lift you up community-wise. Hey, here's the position that just opened. I'll keep an eye out. Like I see you were recently at Amazon. You're looking for a new position in this space. I don't actively stalk the Netflix job boards, but if I see something go by, I'm going to remember this. So you're showing up in the right places, I think, to at least be remembered and start getting that traction again if you're looking for it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Exactly. And there's a lot to it. I always like to remind people to network before you need it. And so even in this space, like, I don't know, obviously it gets stressful when you're like, wait, I still have financial implications coming through. And how do I build relationships quickly? If you've been anywhere before, so you were in a different company, you probably have some relationships built with the people that you worked with, former classmates while you were in college, things like that, that you could reach out and try and find them on LinkedIn, see what they're doing, and just reach out and ask, reconnect. Like, there's never a bad time to reconnect with someone that you had a previous relationship for, and you just got, there's just distance has happened and people get busy and it's harder to remember to, I have to invest in these relationships. But just reach out and see and ask those questions. Do you know of any opportunities? It's easy, I would say, since you've been at Amazon, to want to immediately jump to another big company, but also kind of what other roles and companies are out there that are smaller and would love someone with your big enterprise experience on their team, and really see if you can make an impact. Like, I have one quote that comes back to me all the time that somebody said, where is it better to be a bigger fish in a smaller sea, or to continue to be the small fish in a big sea? And that speaks to business impact and the ability to get into an organization and affect change. Smaller organizations, you may be able to be that cultural driver that you're looking for. You may be able to really speak to, use the experience that you have and go in and be like, wow, this over here is a hot mess, and this is how we fixed it on the last team I was on. And you have that on your resume, so use it and catapult with that. So and I guess, to how do you pick yourself up in those moments? Remind yourself what you've already done. You've already accomplished something somewhere in the role you were in, and it's not a small thing. And we were talking about this yesterday when I was mentoring with Diana about, like, give yourself credit for what you've already done. And a lot of us want to say, well, it was the team, it was this, it was that. And we discount the work we did. Don't do that to yourself. Like, you accomplished a thing, and if your team members that you were in an interview, they wouldn't talk about you. They would talk about what they did. So yes. Talk about what you did and the impact that you had, and use that to build confidence in that moment when you're full of self-doubt. Especially if you had a not great experience on the team you were on. Like, you're probably living in a little bit of self-doubt, like, oh God, that was terrible, I don't want to be terrible, all those things.
Yeah, I think, like, waking up every morning, it's like, I feel like, should I have left? Why did I, like, just like self-doubting, like, my capabilities to, perform. And that's not the case. Like, I had a really fun time, made a lot of change, but I felt like it wasn't just the right fit for me. But I keep waking up in the morning, and so no. But hearing that makes that helps a lot, actually. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know you did reach out, and I'm backlogged like crazy in my inbox this week because of that one post that was really successful.
No worries.
But I will take that time to make sure I tag people as opportunities come up, or even better, I get reached out by recruiters all the time, and their jobs I'm not interested in them. But having that spreadsheet of these are what people are looking for, then I can refer the recruiter to someone else, which helps everybody, right? So that's one of the reasons I do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, I'm just going to start bugging Diana for her brain space. All right. So in that reevaluation phase of this whole thing, like a bad thing happened, you're taking that deep breath, you're trying to figure things out. Are there questions or steps or anything practical that you do when you're reevaluating? Like,
I will often take and say, the gut usually is that all outcomes are bad, right? With change, everything's bad. I will often take and evaluate what is actually the good that could come from this change. This is a change that could be scary. What sort of things could be helpful? What sort of things could be good and come from this? And how do I start out with finding those positive things to pursue, as opposed to drowning in the vortex of, nightmare of this all went terrible? And the brain, like, as people, we're all biased a bit, right? I go to the situation, I think it's going to be one thing, it shifts, whether it's, getting let go. I have been let go in my life, so I can sympathize with that. It's been a while, but it was a very unpleasant experience. And, landing at that spot of, this is horrible, everything sucks, I need to do something quickly. Starting with imagining the possibilities again. Okay, I'm rewriting everything. The worst is I'm sitting at the worst. What is the best? What are the things I want to change given this new opportunity? It's an opportunity, not a boulder in your path. It's something to step on and climb over. What good do I want to pursue? Like, okay, job shift, leadership that I was looking to, gone, other leadership, the next step up, left. Everything's changing right after I got there. But okay, that means we have new leadership and new possibilities in this organization. We may be taking a cultural shift. I would like to be here in my career in a bit. How do I position myself to new leadership? How do I look for opportunities as we're changing to be able to move into that role? That's when I was still employed. Not being employed, it was like, oh, I could do anything. Should I go back to school? Is there a certification I should be looking at before I approach this again? Is there some way that some class I can take that's going to refine me to be able to have show up better in interviews? Even if it's just an online thing that I do in my own time on LinkedIn, like LinkedIn Learning has a bunch of stuff on there that it does record if you've done it. Is there something that I can do so I'm not slipping into despair, but I am positioning myself better for the future? That's usually how do I try to approach that. Okay, everything exploded. What's next? Yeah, I also tend to drink a lot of wine. That's one of my coping mechanisms. I tend to go to the store.
Mentorship Live, we're keeping it real over here.
I am being very authentic here, people. I have had many a glass of wine while sitting there and thinking, what comes next? What do I do? So we all have different coping mechanisms. I when that happens, you all know these, like go exercise, go, do some meditation, go find a self-help book. But all of those things, if you are doing something positive to help yourself, it keeps you from slipping into that pit of despair. I would strongly say don't let yourself get caught in stagnation and paralysis. It's easy to get paralyzed.
You're really reminding me, it's kind of a new thought actually, is when we have these moments, how often in a career or in school or in these circumstances do we forget we were once children that could just sit around and dream of possibilities, and in a sense reimagine where we can go. And that setback could actually be a great calling card for us to say, are you living that life that you wanted to live when you were 10? And, those things that we were passionate about at that age might actually point more to what our true purpose is. Like when I was 4, I was determined I was going to be a nurse. And there are still times I'm like, wow, did I miss my calling by not doing that? And then I look back, well, what does a nurse do? What is the heart of nursing? And it's like, it's helping people. So I can say I can still be a nurse of a sort, just by making sure I'm in that space of helping and listening and triaging someone else's situation, and use that opportunity to kind of get in touch with, wait, am I operating at the core of who I am, or did this job or this situation bowl me over into what it needed me to be at the moment, where I started to lose my own identity somewhat? And I'm wondering if that can't just be an opportunity to pause, think again, and kind of refocus to where it could lead you into a better place.
Sure.
And I loved your like, Di is the one, when she knows something has happened to me, she's the first one that will say, don't spiral into despair over this, Jacqueline. And I'm like, right, don't spiral into despair. So, which I would say is another point. Find those people in your life that are going to tell you don't spiral into despair over this. This is build that community around you that will pick you up in those moments. Yeah. Any other questions? Thoughts?
I'll put one other thing in on this. At those moments, I will often take and say, okay, I'm pausing right now. I'm visualizing, once I've done a little bit of brainstorming, who I want to be in the future. I want to be this person in 3 years in this role in this thing, and try to know who that person is. I mean, this sounds kind of hokey, but it's real. It works. That person, I am caring for that person. I like that person. I want that person's success. In order for that person to succeed, I have to do this right now. It's a little bit of falling in love with your future and protecting it. And that, as I said, sounds hokey, but if you keep that sort of model, you get up in the morning, you're like, I'm moving towards that person. I'm taking care of that person right now by doing what I do today, by dragging myself out of bed and going to the gym when I really don't want to get up, taking care of that future person. And it's a little bit of self-love. And sometimes it's hard to say love yourself, because then people get a little bit weird about that, and that sounds narcissistic and stuff. But if you think of that almost as a separate person that you're caring for, aside from starting to have multiple personality disorder, no, I don't have that. But aside from that, you will start caring about investing in that person, and it's a little bit less feeling selfish than it is feeling selfless to sacrifice for that future. It sounds a little strange. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to talk more about that, but that is a true way to start to protect your future and care for who you're going to be.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of like dream boards in this. You know, I have one. I need to redo it because it's just I could add some things and adjust and make it more pink, actually. Like actually pink. But on each of those, it's you know, that's what I keep looking at. I got it right here. See, it's like on my desk. You know, falling apart, but it's right there. And on my worst days, I look over and remember like, why am I doing this thing? And even if I lost my job tomorrow, there are a couple things on there, like one of my things is to advocate for others. And even if I lost my job tomorrow, I can still keep working towards that future self of advocating for others in my spare time. Like I can still be noisy about how great military spouses are. I can still look for opportunities to volunteer. So for my give to good causes, it doesn't have to be financial. It could be I could get out of bed and still go volunteer somewhere and make a difference and keep working towards that dream board vision that I have for myself. So keep that in mind. And Mohammed, you have your hand up again, so please chime in. Yeah, you're making me excited by being here because
thank you guys. Like coming back to your guys' point in regards to kind of looking at someone that's kind of in that position already and like you want to be that. You know, I'm 100% agree with that, but sometimes I do hear and sometimes maybe I do feel sometimes like, you know, when you look up to these people or you look them on LinkedIn or you see what they're doing, like it kind of puts like, I guess a depressing feeling in you, like saying that, you know, why am I not there yet? Or, you know, how long will it take me to get there? Or, you know, just because like, you know, you're thinking like, when will you get there? Like, is there a timeline? Is it so like, how do you guys like any advice on how to cope with that? Not saying I go through that, but I see a lot of people do go through that. Like, you know, a lot of people did reach out to me like, oh, how did you get into Amazon? And they're like, oh, I'm trying to get in there, but like, you know, they're not there yet. And so
I'm gonna throw something out there. So my whole life since I became a professional, this is something that I've noticed. Every time the Olympics come around, I look at the gymnasts who are like 16 and getting gold medals, and I'm like, why the hell is that not me? But the trap of falling into comparison with others and where they are at and why am I not where they are at? It's real. It's very real. Like somebody who is my age, has a similar background, who is a multi-millionaire right now, or even, you know, in a position that's the position I want to be, there's always somebody ahead of you. There's always going to be somebody ahead of you. Like the very first thing I would say is if you are going to be comparing yourself to those people and be like, why am I not there yet? It is a very fast path to self-destructive attitudes and behaviors. Wow, I suck. Look at everybody else out there who's so amazing and I suck. But there's two things to remember. One, on LinkedIn, you're going to see everybody's best face and everybody's best foot and everybody's, you know, dream world. You don't actually see the struggles that may go with it or the fact that, you know, they're in that role right now, but they have zero work-life balance because of it, or they had to go through so much schooling that they have $200,000 in student loans and debt that they're trying to pay off. Like the getting that full picture of a person. Nobody's life is as perfect as it looks from the outside. Not really. So, first don't start with the comparison, because you don't know the suffering they went through to get there, or the suffering they're, experiencing at that. Amazon, for example, is an amazing place to work, but it also chews people up and spits them out. Is it lucky to be there? Some people it works for, but their culture does beat a lot of people up. I can say that because the Netflix culture beats a lot of people up. I can honestly acknowledge that. So when you're doing that, first one, that, and the second one is, this is all a mental game, right? You're not going to instantly be at the same level as these people. You can look at things that they did in their life and like the progression of their career path and the sort of position somebody took and be like, I want to model mine to follow that sort of path of it. Like if you see that somebody started out and they were a coder, and then they were a tester, a pen tester, and then they actually became a security engineer or something, you can see job paths or education paths you can follow to lead you in that direction to help you like the person, as opposed to being jealous that you aren't like them right now. That's the one thing I'd really encourage people to look at. If you're comparing yourself to the person because they're doing better, you're going to go downhill. If you're comparing yourself and saying, oh, what did they do different, or what did they do that I can emulate? That's the right way to look at it. They're really succeeding. What did they do to achieve that? And let's be fair. Sometimes it'll be hard work, and sometimes it's going to be like, oh, crap, it was luck. I've had some luck in my career. And you can't emulate luck. You can only stumble into it. But if you keep putting yourself out there and you keep pursuing things, eventually, like, odds are odds. Sometime the dice roll is going to work for you if you are putting in the effort and making yourself available and out there. And maybe it's just that availability that they had and putting themselves out there over and over that helped them. So that's my 2 cents, except for it was more like 25 cents. That's my 25 cents.
It was a
Talked a lot.
great portion of $1 though.
I
So
agree, yeah,
fantastic. I'd also say, like, one of the things, like when I start getting in the comparison game, and it's super easy to fall into that trap. And for me, it's even like people we kind of started LinkedIning together at the same time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they have so much interaction, and like, how are they getting that kind of traction? And I'm over here like, yeah, 10 people like something. It's kind of I have to take a step back and remind myself to help other people. Like it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I am a sprinter. Diana knows this about me. I get an idea and I'm like, I want to run with it. And I want to be successful tomorrow. And part of that, I'm like, oh, it's entrepreneurial mindset, and that's great to have that. But it can also be so discouraging because it takes time, and I don't want it to take time. I want my fast food success. And so it's also just kind of pausing and reminding yourself, what are your goals? And, I was a runner for a long time, so I have to remind myself of what it felt like at mile 13 or mile 15 or mile 20 of a marathon. And all of them felt like I would never get there. But it's one small foot in front of the other, one consistent pattern or behavior, one small piece of your journey that you just keep moving forward. So just keep that in mind, that it's did you do something today to get to your end goal? And if that answer is yes, then you're successful in your own mind, in your own right, and just let the other stuff go. And on things like that, sometimes it's like they're just finding their tribe.
Question I tried to send through the app about, so my daughter has a different last name than me, and I just automatically put my last name for all the kids. Is that going to be a problem?
I think that's I'm going to mute.
Oh, yeah. I suspect that was.
Yeah, I think something happened, and where she got a call or something. But anyway, it is that kind of keeping one foot in front of the other and making your own progress, and then being content with your own progress, and know that if it's going to come, it's going to come. And that journey grows us up. It grows us up, whether it takes a week or whether it takes, for me, it took 3 years to get full-time employment. And I'm like, wow, I could have really, if I'd have known this, it wouldn't have taken as long. Had it not taken as long, I wouldn't have grown as much. And I probably wouldn't have this passion for helping others. So I have to acknowledge what came in that time period and just be satisfied with that, the growth, and love on it like a little bit. So that was a great question. I love it. Anything else from anyone? All right. If not, how about, do you know of any specific resources? I guess there's two parts to this question. One is like, if you have such a negative surprise, how do you know you need professional help versus just self-talk? Like,
wow, that's a hard one, isn't it? Because we all go through seasons, like seasons where something bad happens, and am I depressed or am I just sad and mourning? And I'm going to put out my viewpoint. Everyone can be like, you're crazy, but I am a huge advocate of therapy. I recognize if you're between jobs, it's a little more expensive and may not be as realistic, though there's some options out there like Lyra or others where you can be connected. But if you are waking up in the morning and it is harder to get out of bed because you're like, I don't know if I can face this today, that is absolutely time to get somebody to help. And those resources are sometimes from, as I said, like professional stuff. If you are involved in any sort of religious organization, you can often find it there, any sort of community organization. But we as humans, especially in this country, are not always taught what tools we have to help us through the hard things. Like, I can talk vestigially about it. I've done my share of therapy because I think it's incredibly good for you. But when you're really struggling and day after day, it feels like it's slipping downhill, not up, you need some support. There are people out there who are trained in how to help with these processes. People out there who it's their whole job to give you the right tools and the right nudging and directions to be better. So I am almost always an advocate of therapy. If you are reaching the point, though, where you are thinking like those, there's no light at the end of the tunnel thoughts, any sort of, like if you are afraid to open your email, if you are afraid to open letters that come in the mail, maybe a bill or just something that's so overwhelming. If you find that a small thing sends you into a tailspin very quickly, those are the times that you definitely want to be like, I probably should talk to somebody who can help me through this. That'd be my first instinct on it. And, I am super reactive. I'm like, oh, this is too much. I need somebody to come alongside. And sometimes that's friends, sometimes it's people at church, but sometimes that's a therapist. And it's been every time that I've said, okay, I need to talk to a professional, whether it's, or a life coach, which is sort of like therapy light in my mind. Either of those, when you are not moving forward and you don't feel hope of moving forward again, or when you are waking up every day with your heart pounding because the events are so overwhelming, get somebody to help you out with that. You need somebody to help you ratchet it down and start, how do I deal with these emotions without always being unable to address it? I can't concentrate, I can't sleep. Professional.
Yeah. And I kind of fell in the trap. And again, Di is one of my people who pulls me out of my stuff. So, it was kind of like, but I already did a lot of work. So therefore I should be able to handle this still. And it was kind of that revisiting of, the work was great and it's going to help me launch forward. But like this week I had an intake with a therapist and she was already, calling me on stuff that I hadn't thought about already, like in day one. So, and it's just kind of, oh yeah, that work that I did last time, didn't cover all the facets of who we are as humans because our stories are rich and none of us even a sibling in the same household is not going to have the same story as you, because you were in a different club than them. You were participating in a different thing than them growing up. Someone said something to you that they didn't say to them. So, your story is truly the most unique thing all of us have in our history, in all of human history. No one has that duplicate story. So being able to revisit it and peel back whatever layer of that onion that you've got, just it's worth that journey, even if it's really scary to start. Like, yes. It's only scary at the beginning, and well, okay, I can't say only, but because there will be other times. So, and this is one I would love to toss out to anybody. If you have resources on mental health or anything that's helped you before, you can throw it in chat. You can chime in on video if you wanted. I've used Talkspace, which is a kind of quick way to get connected with somebody. If you just need they're really good with tools like I need to learn how to deep breathe through the situation, like things like that. They're really great. And you'd mentioned one already, Lyra?
Headspace, probably.
Oh,
Lyra,
well.
Lyra Health, Headspace, a couple of them out there.
Mhm.
Yeah, Victoria, it absolutely is like a great app for that. So
Mhm.
statistically, I'm pulling this out. I've been a gamer in my past, so I'm flying my geek flag here for a moment. Statistically, meditation for 10 minutes a day increases performance in something as refined as like a video game by like 15%. How much do you think that affects your job if you're just doing that? Just 10 minutes. A small thing that centers you for the rest of the day. That's something I'd advocate a lot.
Yeah, and they even have interview meditations, and I did that before I went into my Microsoft interview, and I walked into that room feeling confident and calm. And if you have that tool and you have that work put in before you move forward, it can only help. Like, and I had a great time because I just felt great about it. So, does anybody else have any resources right offhand that you'd want to drop in? If you are at that I'm not getting out of bed phase because of a negative surprise, please do realize there are hotlines and please, like, don't give up on today. And tell yourself that every day. Like, reach out. Are there any other questions? Yeah, I love that. If you don't think you have time for it, that's when you really need it.
Yeah, once your life
Amazing
hits
insight.
like, I can't fit 10 minutes in, you really need to fit that 10 minutes in.
Like, that's your new priority for the day. Let's see. I've already covered all the questions that I had today. So, like, is there anything else? Like, would you like to add anything on wrapping this up? Give one more opportunity for anybody here on the call to chime in or ask questions. Thank you for being here, everyone. Like, I'm always nervous until the first person shows up. So thank you for being here.
Let me throw one other thing out there real fast, if you don't mind, Jacqueline.
Of course.
One of the biggest challenges I think that we all face at work today is we hear a lot of talk about being our authentic selves and showing up with authenticity. But I think that's often meant only so much authenticity. We don't want all of your authenticity. We want your authenticity within a certain parameter. Organizations, no matter how kind or nice the organization is, no matter how much they care about people, there's often a point at which being your authentic self, if your authentic self is going to pieces, that you still only want to express a certain amount of that at work. I wish I could say that we have evolved to the place where, somebody can go into the meditation room and sob for 2 hours and that's considered okay. But the people you're working with are still humans also, and obsessed with, getting the right, we need this person to show up and perform, and, they'll give you like a time frame if there is an instant, but be aware that the messaging about being your authentic self, yes, it's real, but also they want your authentic best version of yourself a little bit. If you are the disaster for too long, organizations tend to lose patience. I don't know if anybody out there has experienced that, but it's a real thing. Your job is not your friend.
Yeah, I was in another mentorship call right before this one, actually, and I was talking about, we hear, and you even see it on job post, we're your new family. No, no, your work is not your family. Don't make it that. Family will stick with you through the tough stuff, and work is a job. They need to know you can perform your job. So that's a great bucket to remind yourself of. And please, if I mispronounce your name terribly, I'm going to apologize now. Is it Suryanshi? You have a question or a comment?
Hi. No, you actually pronounced it correctly.
Okay.
So I actually have a question for you guys. So I'm in my early 20s and, I'm just switching to my second job. So for me, the biggest kind of thing I struggle with is constantly seeing people my age, having accomplished certain things. And I've read a lot of posts where it's like, oh, you're only in your 20s, you have your whole life ahead of you and all that. But it's like, when your peers and your friends are in like super good positions in jobs, and I don't know if you have ever watched Friends, but that one phrase where Rachel goes, everybody around me is getting, married, getting promoted, and I'm just getting coffee, and it's not even for me.
Yes.
I think
First of
that's
all,
the
read this
biggest
book.
thing I face, like, struggle with.
First of all, read How Women Rise. I rarely am like this book, this one, but it kind of exposes the mistakes we made. And some of this may be, we talked a little bit earlier about comparing yourself and how it can be a trap, and you don't see what their day-to-day life actually looks like if you're following it on social media or even just reconnecting over coffee. You can always, if it's reconnecting over coffee with your classmates, then be like, oh, but how's work-life balance? How does this go? And try and get a better picture of what the reality is. But like if you get in that trap, it's dangerous. And again, you're on your own path, you're on your own journey. And I would just say, be aware, are you falling into some of these traps that talk about in the book? Like, are you advocating for yourself? Are you taking credit for your own work? Are you telling your managers where you want to go? We often don't do that, and we think if we show up and we do a good job, it's all just going to come to us. And there's another counterpart book to this, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And that one is not just on what women do consistently in their roles, but I would start in that space so that you can kind of wrap your head, like, it just honestly evaluate, am I doing any of these things in my current role? It was very eye-opening to how much of that book related to things that I do and should not do. And one of the biggest ones was I didn't take credit for my own work. I always pointed back to the team. Oh, well, we did that. Well, no, I was the one that was up late pushing through to make sure we landed on time. But I wouldn't always give myself credit for it. So that's one thing, but I would love to hear Di's perspective on this as well.
So we did, as I said, talk about like slightly earlier. I think one of the things, if you are trying to get yourself into a position, or if you're in a position you're trying to go to a new one, it's being very clear in your mind about where you want it to be. Like if you're hearing all your friends, oh, I got this great job, oh, I'm having this great life change, oh, I found the right thing. First, is that the same thing you want? And if it is, what led them down that path is the right way to look at them. Like, hey, can I learn from their journey as opposed to sit here and be jealous of it? But then also knowing very clearly where you want to be. It's easy to hear a lot of noise and be like, oh, they're happy here and they have this great thing. That must be what I want. That's not necessarily true. It's a really good self-inventory of, hey, they're happy with that, but what I want looks like this, and I want to work towards this. And maybe I can learn something from their journey, but maybe not. Maybe their journey just goes a different direction than you want. And if it is exactly the same, then, do look at how they did it. That's a couple of things I'd throw out for that. I don't know if that helps, Siranchi. I know what you mean about looking at peers and being like, dang it, why am I not them?
Yeah, and I think like I could have you back again, Di, just talking about how you kind of self-advocated from one role to another. Like she, like her path upwards has been like moving elsewhere until she's like, you know what, this one's not getting me here. Bam, I'm taking this opportunity because it'll give me the title, the pay, the whatever I want. And it's, to me, I'm like, oh my God, it takes so much guts. Well, yeah, it takes guts. Just like, so we all have guts, use them. And there is a question. Yeah, how can you get more specific about your path? I know it's helpful to know where you want to go, but how do you know?
Oh,
I could probably speak on this one if you want me to jump in
Yeah.
a little bit. One of the things that I did, and in the course that I built, actually, I have this whole exercise of inventorying all the things you've done. And I'm talking like, if you volunteered, I want you to write down what did you do in that role. And if you have a daily task list that something, I actually put grocery shopping on mine. So, like the things I've done, I inventoried all the things I've done. And then I started writing, what do I love about it and what do I not love about it? And then what I found, and I didn't know this would happen while I was doing this, I started seeing the same words pop up every single time. And it was always like helping others. I loved helping others. I hated making phone calls. Like you're never going to get, you're not, if you give me a job where I have to make phone calls, I will not be successful and I will be stressed out and I will be needing professional help faster. Like we can just go there with that. But if you give me a role where I am looking at customer pain points and trying to help them, then it goes back to the core of who I am. And it's kind of surfacing your own personal brand. And then once you see those words that pop up every time, now you can actually go search even in LinkedIn jobs for the word. I searched for the word smile and I laughed because I'm like, there's not going to be anything in here. I'm going to get 0 results. I got like 400,000 jobs returned with the word smile. A lot of them were dentistry. But you know what wasn't dentistry was social media marketing, was, you know, actually program or project management. And then you can look at those job posts and be like, why are they using the word smile in here? And I started getting a clearer picture. We want to delight our customers. We want to bring joy to their face. We want to see them smile at the next conference. And then now you have your brand and you can filter all job posts or all career goals through, is this going to bring me the joy that I am looking for in my day-to-day role? And I can guarantee you that if I shift from the role I'm doing now, it's going to be because I found one of those jobs where it's like, oh, it hit all of my brand points. This job will make me delighted every day to go to work because I will be bringing people a smile to people's faces constantly. And I know that if I'm looking at a job post and it's not hitting any of those things, it's not for me. Again, if there's phone call in there, I would rather be unemployed on the streets than have to make phone calls every day. It's like that much dislike for that. So if you see a bunch of those things you don't like to do, there are millions of job posts on LinkedIn today, right now. One of them is going to have your brand in there. So just try and find that. And that's a technique I will use again and again and again. I reevaluate regularly using the same technique because I've done more things since the last time I did it. So now I can say, do I still love this? And I'm like, I don't know if I could send files. I have to no, I don't think I can, but I have an actual worksheet. If you ping me up on LinkedIn and you want just the exercise worksheet on, it's just a pretty thing that you can fill out. Then I'll happily send it to you. Just know that my inbox at LinkedIn right this minute is a little bit hairy, but I'll get it to you.
I love that you asked the question about how do you know where you want to go? You know, there's so many aspects to that, because as you're trying to evaluate, it's not just going to be, as Jacqueline was saying, you know, what things are heavy. The environment is good too. You know, like you comment, Victoria, knowing what sort of environment. And if you're looking at that, I'd also look at corporate culture some. Because companies are like people, they have personality. I've worked at some that were very aggressive, dog eat dog sort of world. I've worked at some that were very soft and, you know, kind of cushy. We want everybody to work together and we'll all rise together. And I've worked at some that are like, all right, you showing up today? Let's do this. And, you know, that sort of mentality, I think you'll find if you know really well the sort of environment that you like, that will also help direct your job search. Like there's some places I definitely don't want to work based upon it. And okay, I'm going to throw out there, is anybody here use Blind? If you go and Google, there's an app for Blind, and you can sign to the website. It gives you a lot of insight into what it's like to actually work at a company. Now, let me be clear, a lot of that is also the cesspool of toxicity that you get from any sort of online environment.
Especially as anonymous as it is.
Yes, because it's anonymous, you know, you get some of the toxicity, but you'll often get thoughtful conversations. If you're thinking of going to a company, like look at that, look at Glassdoor for it, see what the employees who work there, how their reviews of it are. and watch out for those warning flags, because almost everybody has a social media presence on something like Glassdoor, where if they see negative reviews, they're going to go get some employees to put positive reviews. But be sure that you examine that and understand as you're looking at an environment. Is this environment going to work for me? It's a real factor. So,
Yeah, we have and I think you probably just answered the next question. That was like, how can you feel out a culture of a company? Sometimes it's just existing employees might be over generous with their assessments. I know she spoke to that with blind, and that's exceedingly important. If you can get an informational and say, like, especially if you've built a relationship with someone over time, you're like, I want to know, how is it really? But then bring great questions. One of the best, and I have said this like in so many mentorship calls now because it was so insightful, I asked, how does your team prioritize learning? And I got so many red flags from the answer I got. Like, he actually told me, why would I spend 4 hours learning something when I could spend the same 4 hours with my kid? And I'm like, whoa, that is a work-life balance red flag right there. If he feels like he's not even getting time with his family because of a job, I was like, I don't want to work for this team. So really, and that's where you could use a sounding board or somebody else. Like, these are questions I'd like to bring to the interview. Can you think of anything more insightful that would help? And because you want to try and tease out the truth of being on that team. And if you're in an interview working on it, I only got like 5 minutes to ask my questions at one. I would try and see if you can't finagle a little bit more time on that, because 5 minutes is not, well, it was enough for me to get some red flags, but it was not enough to go through all the questions that I had on, like, what is it really like to work here? And it goes back to your personal brand and knowing what you're willing to compromise on yourself if you are so interested. And I'm not talking about if you're in a desperate situation, you need finances. Like, at that point, maybe you just need to take something to bolster your resume. But
I've done that.
Yes, and you know you're going to be there for a short time, but that's a different scenario. I'm talking about if you have the luxury of being picky. So ask those questions, investigate. I love blind because it will tell some very honest truths. And then sometimes you'll have the bitter employee. So just kind of keep in mind that not every team and not every experience is that way as well. But
I have asked during an interview when I was coming up at the time to be like, hey, can I talk to somebody else who's just in a position a little bit about their day-to-day? I'm just interested in what the day-to-day experience might be like. Is there somebody on the team I can talk to? And usually if you get somebody outside of the normal interview loop, you have one more time for those questions, and two, they'll be a little bit more, honest about it. Like, oh, can I talk to the last person who joined the team to understand what it was like? And then you can ask questions like, how was onboarding? And see if they actually bring people up to speed well, or if they sort of throw them into the fire. Like, that's a great one, is what is onboarding like here? To somebody
who was
who's
the
just
last person that held this job? Why did they leave?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get a political answer, I promise, but really listen to it.
Yeah.
Oh, they felt they could exceed outside of the organization. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because that, they didn't get the growth that they wanted. And that also gives you time to kind of like a little bit of more that you can dig into with if you can, especially if you can follow up with another person on the team.
Sure. Or casual chat. Hey, have you had any great vacations over the past year? It sounds like an offhanded comment, but if the answer is no, they didn't take vacation for a year, that might indicate the company doesn't like people taking vacation. If they have the take it when you need it, we're not going to count the days. When did you last take vacation? 2019. Really? Suspect.
Yeah. I need to get a red flag here so I can start waving it when we start talking about these things. But all right, we are at time. I definitely want to be cognizant of yours. If anybody has other questions, I can be around for another maybe 10 minutes or so before I have to jump onto something else. But Diana, thank you for being here today. I will stop our recording and I really appreciate your time. Your insights were amazing.
Thank you.
I'll
Always
drag you back here at some other point because I can't get enough of your insights. It's just too good.
A joy talking to you. And everybody who's on the call, really glad you were here. Reach out to me too on LinkedIn. I'll see what help I can give. But Jacqueline, you're amazing. Thank you for setting this up.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.